Hello everybody, welcome to the Northern Film Review. This week we've got a great show, a one-off show, about a very infamous topic within the filmmaking world. Are Marvel films cinematic? This is a controversial topic set out by the famous director Martin Scorsese, and this week we'll be discussing it in depth, going into details on what is cinema, are Marvel films good, what is the point of Marvel films, commerce and art, and we also have a wonderful guest on today to be discussing these topics as well. Hope you enjoy. The Northern Film Review with your hosts Oliver Ellis and Luke Simpson. So yes, hello everybody. So we're here with obviously myself, the important one here, and we're also here with Luke, and we're also here with Luke. How you doing? I think for sort of what we said this before we started recording, we're gonna go Anderson and Simpson because those are your last names.
Mm-hmm.
But I feel like I'm going to mess that up halfway through, and then start calling you Luke again. Yes, we're going to be discussing Martin Scorsese and what is cinema, right, aren't we?
Yeah.
Yes. You don't seem very enthused. But
Luke is a bit nervous. Anderson is a bit nervous. It's his first time doing it, so it's a bit new to him. So
it's fine. It's just talking a bit in it. It's nothing nothing that nerve-wracking. So basically, interesting story about this podcast is we recorded this once on Sunday, and we were initially using Discord to record, and then I found out that my internet is so ungodly slow, it kept cutting out. So hopefully it doesn't keep cutting out in this.
And even worse, my computer crashed twice as well during that recording. So
it did,
that was fun.
It was a cacophony of hellish things going on, but it you know, we practiced the debate. We practiced it in a way that was, you know, feasible and all right to do.
So did you agree or disagree then in the end? Generally.
Well, we'll talk about that, but I think it's complicated. I don't want to spoil because we're basically repeating it again. But I think my point's a bit more well formed than that before. So, like I said in the intro, we are discussing. I put it in my notes, the Great Debate, which sounds a bit sort of you know.
Sounds like a 40s film, doesn't it?
Yeah. I don't know, a bit of a weird name. I'd perhaps not keep that as a title. But it is because, like I said in the intro, Martin Scorsese said a very controversial thing. Because it was originally done in like a podcast setting, I think. It was like a wonderful. Now the link's not working. A wonderful like podcast they did with a bunch of directors, and he said, "Oh, blah 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 blah," or whatever. That's like those are his exact words. Blah 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 blah. Which
I believe it was comic book movies are just roller coaster rides and not cinema.
Yeah, something like that. And again, this is perhaps a bad omen for the rest of the podcast. My Guardian link isn't working. Yeah, he said something like that. And I think it's an interesting sort of thing to say because he is a film director, and it perhaps brings on to the bigger conversation of what is cinema. So I agree with him. And I think Avengers films are sort of, you know, roller coasters, and that sort of thing. Whereas the two Lukes, Anderson and Simpson, disagree with me and disagree with Martin Scorsese. That is correct, guys, is it not?
On that one point,
Yeah.
I do like a lot of his films as well.
I was going to say, I'm the same with Luke here as well. I've got nothing against him. I just don't like his quote. I just think it's completely wrong. So
Okay. So what? Elaborate on that, Luke, or Simpson. Why do you think it's wrong?
Well, I think his idea of what cinema is wrong. I think the idea of it being all about being solely about art and themes and stuff like that, I think like the vast majority go to the cinema for entertainment purposes. They go to have a good time, to watch an entertaining film, not to talk about how or go and watch depressing films about meanings and stuff like that. And to go alongside that, a lot of Marvel films do have meanings behind it, and have got solid points behind each film. So I do disagree with Martin Scorsese saying it's not cinema and it's a roller coaster ride. Well, it kind of is a roller coaster ride. It's fun. It's fun. That's what I think movies.
But is that a bad thing? That it's fun?
Yeah, yeah. I think he's saying like it's what was it? Saying that the Marvel films aren't cinema, which is just wrong. I think it really is just wrong, and his idea of cinema are completely different to other people's idea of cinema, and I just think a lot of people agree with it because it's Martin Scorsese.
Yeah, and he is quite a critically acclaimed director. Everyone's seen a Martin Scorsese film, but I agree with him. I think I don't like Avengers films because I don't really get much from them. And this is a point I made in the podcast that we didn't record properly, is that I don't get anything from them because I can't relate to the characters, and I don't really get anything from it as a film watching experience. I think it's just, I think what he meant by like a roller coaster is that sort of, it takes you on a ride, and it's it's sort of interesting and all that, but you as a person just kind of get a bit scared for it, and after it you just kind of like, yeah, I went on a roller coaster, and then maybe you talk to your other friends, but like, yeah, I went on a roller coaster, but there's no sort of deeper sort of emotional effect that it has on you. Like I've never seen an Iron Man film been like, wow, I'm a changed person because of that film. I now understand the emotional effects of a billionaire tycoon, and that's perhaps what I don't get from it. I just don't get anything from it. And an analogy that I quite like is sort of it is sort of a paint by numbers sort of thing, right? About when they make the film, is that they've got this sort of image that is from the comic books, which is creative and sort of artistic and interesting, and I think the original comic books aren't a roller coaster or whatever. Well, they're more artistic, whereas I think the films, they're just kind of replicating the comic books on screen and not really giving anything to it, and they're just kind of like, this is the film, this is what we've done, and that sort of thing. So I don't really get anything from it. Yeah.
But like, to counter that, I think Luke may agree with me with this. Like, you're saying that it's like a carbon copy of a comic, but you've got book adaptations of films, haven't you?
Yeah.
And they're basically a carbon copy of that as well. So you got your Hunger Games, you got your Divergences, you got your Perks of Being a Wallflower, and all these romantic films and stuff like that. It's basically saying that, well, they're not cinema because they're just a carbon copy of a film, carbon copy of a book, isn't it? So,
well, I think perhaps stuff like, I think Hunger Games I will put into the same category as what Martin does, and I'm sure you probably agree. It is sort of, Hunger Games are more sort of roller coastery type films, and I think I guess same with sort of Harry Potter as well. There's I'm not saying that book adaptations into films go into this category, and then I think perhaps your point of like, this is blah blah. It's fair enough, but like, I think I don't know. I just can't relate to the characters in any way, just at all. And I think cinema to me is something where I can relate to that person in the film, and I can get something from it for my own life, and sort of have a greater understanding of people, and have my sort of perception on things change, and all that sort of thing, and understand sort of the experiences of people whom I can't understand usually.
Oliver, have you seen The Winter Soldier?
Yeah, I have. Yeah.
Because that's one that would maybe explore themes like whether you should trust the government and all the shady stuff that happens there. So I would argue that it actually sort of reflects a lot of the real life themes in this, superhero world.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I would agree with Luke with that as well. And it's with Nostalgia again. It's about privacy as well, isn't it? The main thing about it is the big ships going to the sky, basically spying on people to find people against the government. Basically, it's true, and America does it now and stuff like that. Like it's all too true, and I think themes like that is what people miss in Marvel films, and because you've got other themes, and I touched on it before about not Civil War, Infinity War, and the theme, the what Thanos is doing. Is it good? Is it bad? It's quite what do you call it? A psychological subject,
Yeah, moral
isn't it? It's
dilemma.
like, moral dilemma. Yeah, exactly. It's like, would you kill or would you destroy half the universe to make sure that half the universe lives well?
But I think that perhaps let's take sort of Endgame or the films. I don't think I've seen Endgame, but I've seen the one before it, where he does kill everyone. Spoilers, by the way. And I watched that, and I think you said sort of, is it a moral dilemma? Is it sort of a conundrum to which the sort of can be passed on to sort of people? But I don't know. I don't think that is the theme of the film. And I think what is the deeper meaning of the film isn't the fact that is sort of that really. I think the deeper meaning of those films are sort of we all come together and we all got to do this sort of thing, rather than the fact that it's sort of, would you kill half of the people? Because nobody's actually, this doesn't relate to me in any way. I'm not going to be in sort of any sort of circumstance where I'm going to be like, well, I've got to kill half the people here, or do I save the planet from global warming?
There's other themes in them two films though, in Infinity War and Endgame. Like the main one that I always see is whether you'd be willing to sacrifice something to save something else. So the first one Thanos has to kill is daughter Gamora, and the second one, it's Hawkeye and Black Widow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's also got that sense of and also sacrifice as well. Tony Stark sacrificed his life to save to get everything back to normality as well. So
yeah, the one in which they're not willing to sacrifice, they lose, and the one in which they are willing to sacrifice, they win. I think that theme's like consistent, that you need to sacrifice things.
And then you could also say jealousy can get another thing about jealousy is or not jealousy, getting emotions as well. When Star-Lord, they nearly got the glove off Thanos, and Star-Lord saw that Grandma died, and basically don't get your emotions get to you, because when emotions get to you, you do something bad. And that thing that Star-Lord did bad was that he attacked Thanos, which meant that they couldn't get the glove off Thanos in the end. So there's loads of little themes. There's not one big overarching theme in the film. Yeah. It's like loads of little themes. So you've got teamwork as well and stuff like that. So I do think, there are themes within Marvel films. Yeah. You have to look at them. Like most films, you have to look for the themes. Like same with Marvel films, you have to look for the themes.
But I think that's fair. So I like those themes, and I like the ideas of them, and I like that they sort of can be representative of people. But I think the way that they sort of give them to an audience is through people I can't relate to. I can't relate to Tony Stark because he's a billionaire, incredibly attractive sort of guy who's had everything, and I can't relate to a literal god. You know what I mean? I can relate to sort of people. This is a weird example, but I can relate to people in like Train Spotting or something, because they're sort of poor men who are sort of down on their times, and they're sort of struggling with life, and I get something from that. And I think perhaps if the theme of like the Avengers films was in that, I could get something from it. You know what I mean? And I can get something more artistically sort of from it, rather than just perhaps like, well, I kind of get that, but I can't really relate. I just can't relate to sort of any of these people. And I think I've said this to Anderson. No, Anna Anderson. Simpson. I'm even getting confused by your last names as well. This is a complicated scenario. That perhaps the people in the films that I relate to the most are the people without superpowers, really, like Black Widow and Hawkeye, who I'm just like, well, yeah, they're the real underdogs, and that's coming on to my next point. It's like, I want to root for the underdogs. I don't want to be rooting for a god and a billionaire.
Have you seen Ant-Man?
Yeah,
he's very much like an underdog.
Yeah, but he's super intelligent with a bunch of like incredibly
Well, not really. He started off as a thief, didn't he? He started off as a
ends
thief.
up just getting caught up in it.
Yeah. It's training, and he trained for it. Another one, you talk about you want to sympathise to a character, and you sympathise to Hawkeye, is Civil War. And normally in films, when you go into detail on detail in someone's background, you think, oh, they're gonna die. And spoiler alert to Civil War, you go see Hawkeye's family, and that you think, oh, I don't want Hawkeye to die.
I think that was Age of Ultron, but
Age of Ultron, that's it, yeah, Age of Ultron. And you don't want him to die. And then they go to Sokovia to stop Ultron's final demise, final scheme, and he sees a kid and he thinks, oh, that might be that could be my kid, and I don't want someone's family to lose a kid, so he goes and saves the kid, and then gunshots happen. It flashes to him. He's squeezing the kid. You think, "Oh God, he's dead. He's dead," and the family's lost his. Their family's lost their dad. But then you see sacrifice, and there we go again to sacrifice.
Yeah, but I think what I'm trying to say is like the overarching themes of all. I'm kind of lumping them all together here. You know, I'm just kind of be like, because lots of people take them as one thing. And sort of like perhaps there is some outliers in the greater story. So like you said, Ant-Man, Hawkeye and his family and his depressing family, and that sort of thing. But I think the overarching theme and where all of the sort of the focus is pulled towards is, you know, Iron Man, Thor,
Hulk.
Yeah, Hulky Man. And
I also feel like there's a lot more to these characters than the fact that they are rich or they are gods.
Yeah.
Like, Iron Man's so much more complex than that, and to simplify him as just a generic billionaire is just doing them such a what's the word?
Injustice, because I touched on it before as well. The other podcast, technical problems. But he like that. He's an alcoholic. You sympathise him because he's an alcoholic. And the alcohol
it's all about
affects
grief.
him. Yeah, grief as well. It's kind of like mirroring the actual Robert Downey Jr. Like, Tony Stark is basically a representation of Robert Downey Jr. He was rich, and then drugs and alcohol got him and stuff like that, and grief and stuff like that. And you sympathise to Iron Man because he's an alcoholic, and you see him change from that throughout the films. Throughout the films, he starts off being self-centered and being a bit of a dickhead and stuff like that, but then going through the films, then you see him be alcoholic and stuff like that, and then you see around, I think, Iron Man 3, when he gets rid of the arc reactor that's keeping him alive, and that's a sense of Iron Man there. He gets rid of that, and from that is a massive changing point in his story, and he becomes a better person through that.
Yeah, but I think, okay, so he's an alcoholic, right? But I think his experience of being an alcoholic, if I'm putting a Marxist critique on this film, our film lecturer will be very proud of me for saying that. Marxist critique of the film is that, like, you know, his experience of alcoholism is not going to be the same as your or I's experience of, alcoholism. And it's kind of like, well, okay, Tony Stark, he's sort of drinking because he's depressed or whatever.
Well, he lost his dad, didn't he?
Yeah. And that's, fair enough. But I'm sure like someone in his position would be able to sort of. I'm sure if I was another billionaire, I'd be like, wow, okay, I understand this. I get a lot from this. But as someone who isn't a billionaire, yeah, it's just I don't know. Most people save every 50 minutes. Sorry, the clean feeders having a little cry. But yeah, so I don't know. My main problem is I just can't relate. I just can't relate to them at all. And I'm just like, well.
Well, then we can have the argument saying, well, this film isn't aimed for you, then, is it? Like,
yeah,
it's aimed for
it's
comic book
really.
fans, or it's aimed for comic book fans. It's aimed for families, for kids, and stuff like that. But then you can say, well, then you go to like, oh, kids won't like Martin Scorsese's films. They don't want to watch it because it's not Marvel, and it's not aimed for you. That his films are aimed at a certain audience. Marvel films are aimed at a certain audience, and that the Marvel films aimed at a certain audience, they would call that cinema, wouldn't they? So.
Yeah, well, it's definitely not aimed towards me, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
I think that's very
very clear.
Yeah, but and I do think that another problem with the Avengers films is that they're sort of broad churches of films that are kind of like they're sort of pointed towards everyone. Like everyone's like, wow, you got to watch this film, and they're all sort of like common denominator, sort of, and they all look a bit grey, and they're sort of. I really, really hate the look of them, and I think they're all sort of quite ugly. And I think I've seen many videos be like, well, why are Avengers films so gross and horrible? And it's just kind of like, yeah. Anyway,
do you just search up, say, like on YouTube, saying, have you not like searched up why Marvel films are good? Like,
I agree with the colour point, though. To be honest,
Yeah.
some of them do look really dull, especially the Winter Soldier, for example, which is
I
one of
mean,
the better
but
ones. But I think it still looks dull.
Yeah, but then you can say the theme is maybe
Dull,
it's dull
yeah.
because of the type of point it's kind of getting across as well. So it's,
The better ones were Infinity War and Guardians visuals wise, I think. They had a lot brighter colours.
But then you can say the colours dull because, say, Iron Man that came out in 2008, and technology's changed and techniques have changed and stuff like that. Marvel's the cinematic universe has been around 10, 12, 13 years, and throughout then techniques has changed, technology's changed, and you can see that in the film. You can definitely see it from like Captain America to like, I don't know, Civil War to Infinity War.
yeah.
That's why you might say some of the colours are a bit naff and stuff like that.
I think that's a weak argument, because it's kind of like saying, well, because it's an older film, it looks a bit more dull. Well, like a lot of older films do look very, very pretty and very, very colourful, and I think it's perhaps not of the time, but perhaps more of the fact that it is sort of being appease everyone. It's supposed to look good on everything, and it's sort of and again, coming back to my thing I said in the intro, is it more commerce than art? You know what I mean? Is it more sort of there to make money, or is it more to make an artistic point? And I think the films that I perhaps watch, because I'm so independent and so hipster, tend to sort of have that. They don't really care as much if they lose money, because they're making the point that they want to make. And that's something I really like in films, is that sort of they're taking the risk to make the point that they want to make, and that's what their sort of their directive is. It's not to sort of sell a bunch of film tickets and stuff like that, but I think perhaps more like an Avengers film is to do that. I mean, and again, like what Martin Scorsese said, like I think films are roller coasters and stuff like that. Roller coasters are sort of to sell tickets. I'm sure you'd enjoy the roller coaster, but the main prerogative of the roller coaster is not for the roller coaster architect to be like, wow, I've made something really fantastic here. I hope people enjoy the artistic merit of it. They're like, well, okay, well, I want about 50,000 people riding this roller coaster a week, sort of thing. So, yeah, if anyone wants to sort of go off on that.
Artistic value, because it's just trying to please as many people as possible to get as much money as possible.
Yeah.
Like, I can't see that, to be honest, because one of his points is that they were very formulaic, and the good guy gets superpower, bad guy gets similar power. In the end, they fight, and the good guy wins. But if you look at, say, Infinity War, that very much breaks the formula and would go against the safe route, as the enemy Thanos wins. You've seen that one, haven't you?
Yeah, it's an expectation subversion to the genre.
Yeah, I suppose so. But I think that's also how much did that film gross? How much did it make in sort of the box office, and that sort of thing. I think perhaps it probably did subvert expectations of what a film is. But I think at the end of the day, it still followed a lot of the sort of the formulaic sort of ideas and going off why people want to go to the cinema, the sort of thing. And again, it's I think people could still enjoy these films, and people should still enjoy these films. And I think it's very important that people do. And again, people enjoy roller coasters. They're not for everyone. But people enjoy them, and I think, I don't know. I just think they're so sort of.
I was gonna say the fact that Marvel films grow so much is not because Marvel was a much it has been a popular brand since the 60s, even since the 50s. They've been mainstream everywhere in America, especially in America. They've been one of the most highest grossing comic book manufacturers with DC, and I think the reason why back in the 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, stuff like that, not many comic book films were made, and I think when the MCU started, it's the start of change, and it's like all comic book fans around everywhere were like, oh, these are actually good adaptations of my favourite storyline or whatever, and they'll go and watch it, and that's what, and it's millions and millions and millions of people read comics and stuff like that, and that's why millions and millions and millions of tickets have been sold.
Yeah, no, okay, that's fair enough. That's a fair point. But I think, I don't know. I'm starting to lose my trust in my opinions here. But I think my sort of the final point that I want to get on is that he's not saying it's cinema and that sort of thing. But what would you class as cinema? Would you class Martin Scorsese's films as cinema as well?
Yeah, I'll class any film as cinema. I think cinema and films are there to be enjoyed.
Yeah. But at what
enjoyed
point?
By any audience. It can be what it can be a gore fest like Saw. It can be a comedy. It can be action film or action superhero film. It could be a crime film like Martin Scorsese's. I think films, anything put on film is art, and anything put on film is cinema.
See, at what point though do you go, well, this is a YouTube video, or this is a television program, or this is just the news? Because if you're saying that every film that is made is cinema, well,
to me, it's the level of story.
Yeah.
And the characters, and how engaging that is, and how engaging the characters are. And if you look at something like Marvel, it really does do that, because although he's just a billionaire, there's all these other complex things going on with him that intrigue an audience to him, and his story. And if story is the most important thing in cinema, which I think it is, the Marvel films do succeed at that.
Yeah, because if you don't have a good story, no one will be intrigued as well, so...
Yeah, well, I think cinema for me is very much sort of films that I can grasp and change my perspective on things, and sort of changed sort of a bit of who I am and my sort of understanding of the world. So like, and again, sort of Train Spotting as an example I used earlier is sort of a film that, you know, I get a lot from because I'm sort of understanding the ethos and the mind behind people who are addicted to drugs, you know, people who perhaps on the lines, and, you know, Scottish people. And I think that's important to sort of get from it. And I just, yeah, perhaps I don't get that from the, you know, the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Alright, so what if, so going into a Marvel film, you think that, you know, billionaires are just billionaires and that's just that.
Yeah.
But did watching Iron Man not open your eyes to realise that actually they do have a lot of problems and they do deal with grief and depression and all these other emotions that normal people deal with? I mean, is that not showing you and opening your eyes?
It's showing that billionaires are like anyone else. Yes, they have money, but they're human after all.
But I don't really care about billionaires, though. You know what I mean?
Maybe this is a political thing, Oliver.
Yeah, perhaps it is. And I don't know. Perhaps it is, and I think maybe that is one of my larger problems with the films, is that I perhaps can't relate to these sort of large.
We should get another person in who agrees with you, so it's like it's two.
Yeah,
people.
yeah. I'm not recording this podcast with that again, though.
No, no, I'm not.
This is the last time I'm recording this. But I don't know. Perhaps it is down to my sort of political affiliations and the fact that I hate billionaires. But I don't know. There is literally a god in the film. You know, I can't relate to a god. And I think...
But even that god goes through this questioning of who he is.
Yeah.
And whether or not that actually means anything.
Yeah, especially in the Endgame. You haven't seen Endgame, so you wouldn't realise what he's gone through. But like he thinks he's a failure because he didn't kill Thanos when he had the chance to, which meant he went into a massive depression, basically put on loads of weight, and basically went. I know you said, "Oh, it's going to be so unrealistic," but when they go back in time to go and get the Infinity Stones, he goes back to Thor 2. And he sees his mum, and his mum died. But he's like, then his mum realised, oh, he's not the Thor from this universe, and basically gave him a slap around the face to basically snap out of it. You're the son of me and stuff like that, and
you're the son of me.
whatever. But you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And it's basically
the point
to
is
tell.
getting at
Yeah,
is that it uses these big characters, big gods, big billionaires, and then gives them qualities that you wouldn't think they have and just regular people have.
Yeah.
So that you can relate to them a bit more.
Yeah. It's exactly what I'm getting at.
I don't know. I still think even with those qualities, I just can't relate to them. I'm just like, well, you're an incredibly attractive god. He's been sent down from wherever gods get sent down from. And I just like, you know, I just don't vibe with them. I'm just like, oh, okay, you're just a very attractive billionaire god. Do I have to relate to you? But I think sort of coming to the sort of the end of this bit is I think one of the things I want to say is, first of all, I think Wolf of Wall Street could be considered as a roller coaster film and not really very cinematic. Which is a Martin Scorsese film. So I think perhaps he needs to check his own sort of discography before criticising other people's films. You know, and I think perhaps I was playing a devil advocate a bit of it. I think perhaps, although they might not be films that I enjoy, I don't really get anything out of them. I do still watch them. So I can have conversations like this.
Yeah.
But I think if you do enjoy the Marvel films, don't stop yourself from watching it. And just sort of watch the films because you vibe with them. But I also don't think they should be considered as cinema properly. I enjoy watching YouTube videos, but I'm not going to say that they're artistic. I enjoy watching Avengers films, but I'm not going to say that they're cinema. You know what I mean?
But then you can but let's go back onto that YouTube video topic though, and saying some things are artistic, but there's some YouTube videos of people doing animation and stuff like that. Is that not artistic to you, or?
Well, that's like the very sort of what I'm sort of going on about is sort of.
You talk about like Jake Paul and all
yeah,
that type of
and
bollocks.
people vlogging and sort of, you know, the sort of
That's
stuff.
not cinema, no. That's
Yeah.
just
The sort of stuff
talking
I
about
watch on
themselves.
YouTube is people like ranting on about sort of, well, this is why this person got cancelled, and stuff like that. And I think, you know, I enjoy those things, and I do get something from them, but I'm not sort of getting a lot from them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I'm not sort of getting a sort of wider understanding of the world, and that sort of thing. But interesting though, to watch.
Yeah. But one final point as well, it's not to do with the MCU, but it's to do with comic book films in general.
Yeah.
You can make comic book films cinema. And to be honest, Martin Scorsese produced it, but you got Joker. I would class that as cinema. And it's also a comic book film, so it's got the best of both in it, hasn't it? So,
Have you seen that, Oliver?
I have, and I wish you wouldn't bring Joker up, because I think it is perhaps the one film that I think is cinema, but I also don't think it's a superhero film either, because I can relate to Joker, not as that I'm going to sort of go kill everyone, but
Yeah.
I do relate
disabilities.
Yeah, and I think that's broadening on sort of the underdog theory that I was talking about. Is that I do get something from Joker, and I do get sort of understanding of people's mental health and sort of the difficulties that people have with that, and, you know, being sort of on a poorer social economic scale, and sort of you know, wondering who your real father is. Is it Batman? Who knows? And that I really like that, and I like that as a film, but I also don't think it's sort of really. I don't think it's part of, and also it's not part of the MCU, is it?
Yeah.
So,
But I don't know if it was the quote about the MCU, or was it about comic book films in general?
I don't know.
I think it was comic book films in general, but
Yeah.
we obviously assume that's the MCU because it is
Yeah.
most of.
Yeah.
I
Because
think
the
that's
DCEU was tragic, so.
Yeah, I mean
I'm sticking
that.
up for that.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I'd say Joker is cinema. And I think perhaps Martin Scorsese, because I think on that panel that he originally said it on, there was the director of Joker on there.
Todd Phillips, wasn't it?
Yeah. So
I think what's his name was on it from Goodfellas, and
De Niro.
yeah, he was on it.
De Niro.
Yeah.
Was it a panel on Joker, do you think, then?
Yeah,
Yeah,
could have been.
Yeah.
We'll have to discuss Joker in detail. I mean that's very film schoolly. That is.
Yeah.
The Joker is actually cinema.
It's like last week's episode on Psycho. We went very much a film school film. We went in detail with, so.
What I think we're closing on our thoughts now, but what I like about sort of Avengers films is that because at film school you get like sort of segments of people who like certain films. You know, you get the sort of the people who like Wolf of Wall Street and Goodfellas and that sort of thing, and then you get the sort of the more indie people who like sort of like me, who like Trainspotting and stuff like that, even though it's not really an indie film. And then you got sort of the people who like Nolan films, and you got the people who like Avengers films.
You got Fincher films. You got Edgar Wright films.
But
I'm by the
I'm
way.
Yeah, I'm talking about sort of, groups of people, and it's interesting. But so yeah, that was a good discussion though. I think we've covered a lot of points there. And
one
Anderson,
more thing.
Yeah, go
When
on.
you said with The Wolf of Wall Street and Goodfellas, a lot of them films are quite similar and formulaic, and you could definitely argue that Martin Scorsese also does have a formula. People getting rich, drugs.
No,
A lot about gangsters and gangs and stuff like that as well.
Yeah. And is having a formula bad?
No, I
works.
completely agree. And like I said Wolf of Wall Street should be considered as sort of a roller coaster type film, because it really is. But I think some of his films I do consider more cinematic. And I think he does follow a like you said, a pattern in his sort of formula in his films. And yeah, I think perhaps Martin Scorsese perhaps wasn't the best person to make that as a comment. If someone like Quentin Tarantino said it, or Celine Sciamma, or Fincher, or people like that made that quote, it'd be a bit sort of, I don't know, a bit more justified in its approach, I think.
Yeah.
But yeah.
But you see, like you said about formula, I think most directors have a formula, don't they, that they stick with.
Yeah, but I think that's more sort of artistic, isn't it? Though I think that's what a director is, and that's sort of the artistic theme that's going through them.
Well, like Nolan has his theme of time as well. Like,
yeah,
in literally the majority of his films, it's about time or something about a clock or something to do with time, isn't it? So
yeah, something. We'll have to discuss Nolan eventually and go in depth on his films. But we are nearing the end now, and I'm conscious of time. So hopefully you enjoyed this debate on. I don't think we really came to anything conclusive because we kind of stuck to our own opinions. But I think we did change the sort of perspective on it a little bit. Would you guys agree?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah, I think we're all very stubborn.
Yeah, we're all very stubborn. And perhaps I think, you know, if we get meet up in person, perhaps it might have been a bit more heated and changed people's ideas.
When alcohol's involved as well, that's always a good thing to have a debate.
It is very much a sort of a pub debate, this, isn't it?
Yeah.
But it was very interesting to sort of see your guys' opinions on it, and perhaps I was a bit outnumbered.
You don't mess with a comic book fan like me.
Yeah. don't mess with the Lukes. You know? I think perhaps we should have got someone with a different. We should have had loads of Lukes.
Two Olivers versus two Lukes.
Yeah, just fill it up. But it was interesting. There's a lot of Olivers on our course as well. So hopefully you've enjoyed it. Thank you, Luke Anderson, for coming on the show and giving your 2 cents.
Thank you for having me.
It's all right. Well, you can come back anytime. So make sure to check us out on our Instagram, the Northern Film Review. Make sure to check us out on YouTube if you're listening to the radio show, the Northern Film Review. And if you're watching us on YouTube, check us out on our radio show, Lee Student Radio, every Saturday, 12 to 1. Hope you enjoyed the show. Hope you got a lot from it. And we'll see you guys next week. Bye.
Bye.